So my name is Daisy Benitez. I'm an exercise science major, and I was assigned Newton's first law of motion, also known as the law of inertia, and for the sake of this project, theory 3. I decided to focus on race car driving and the overall sport itself and how Newton's first law is demonstrated within this sport. This is an image of myself, and now we will get into what is Newton's first law. So I pulled this quote and definition outside of our textbook, and it reads, "A body will maintain a state of rest or constant velocity unless acted on by an external force that change the state." So it's basically saying the same thing that our high school physics classes taught us, that an object at rest will stay at rest and an object in motion will remain in motion unless an external force is acted on it, which we will go into. So the next question would be, where is Newton's first law in race car driving? And there are many prime examples within it, and I'm going to be going over these. So the start of the car in both the human body and the car itself. So we know that when a car is in park, specifically this race car, um, the car is at a rest. However, when the gas is pushed, the car is now going at a constant velocity. So the external force now changed that to be a constant velocity in both the human and the car. So now the pushing of the brakes would be like the opposite of that, because you have an object going at a constant velocity. Now an external force has acted on it, and now it's changing its velocity, and it will eventually go into a rest state. So a car accident would be another example like that, in that it was moving at a constant velocity, but now an external force, which is sometimes is the net force of a wall or another car, is now changing that state. And then the last one would be the seatbelt. So when you are driving, and let's put a scenario that this athlete is driving and then gets in a car accident. So now that net force is acting against the car, and the seatbelt is keeping you at or the athlete at a state of rest. So it's kind of preventing it from an external force changing that state. So you would want to stay at rest in your seat. So now we are going to go into the atomical position of a race car driver, and I selected these two images after doing research because I felt like it showed it from a good plane. So you'll see that in all race cars, the interior is the same for the positioning of the athlete. And this is basically, you'll see that the legs are never fully extended straight, because this is a preventative for the athlete, because it is no secret that car accidents are rather common in this sport. So in bending the legs this way, you are essentially saving the athlete's legs if that were to happen. And it also doesn't tire their legs out, and it keeps them awake and not going numb during their races. Lastly, you'll see that their elbows are bent at a 45-degree angle, which is highly important for their because you again don't want your arms completely straight for the whole duration of the race. At times these races are many hours or even just an hour, but to have your arms straight and extended that way would be uncomfortable. And it's also important for their wrist joints, and because they don't want the athletes gripping the steering wheel too hard if they were to have it fully extended. So now I'm going to go over the muscular participation in this sport. So the key things are the core, ankle, knees, and neck. So the core and the neck muscles are really trained to maximum strength because they're engaged throughout the whole sport. The neck is The neck is trained in more ways than I've seen in other sports because their helmet is very heavy in this sport. It weighs as much as a bowling ball plus their own um weights that they're putting on their own like C7. So the knees and the ankle joints are highly trained as well because um they're always moving in a way, like the ankle is in charge obviously of the gas and the brake, so they really want to strengthen these areas. So now we're going to go into the physiological exercise to an effective performance. So this is basically saying like, how are we going to use the physiology of exercise to better your performance? So the first thing we have to recognize is that these athletes have to train like they are marathon runners because their heart rate is always above a resting heart rate during the sport because they are moving at like 150 miles per hour to 200 miles per hour. So the number one way to do this is cycling. The second way that they do it, but cycling is the recommended because of your knees as well. Um, so it would be cycling, running, then brisk walking if you are just getting out of an injury. So cycling improves the cardiovascular system, and by doing this for a long duration of time, they are improving their heart rate, their stroke volume, and their VO2 max. And they also are improving the highlighted muscles, which is just a bonus. So now they will do things such as table tennis or other like more fine motor focused exercises to improve their eye-hand coordination, also their just overall neuromuscular communication, because it could be eye-foot coordination, but the main point of this is to act quickly. So during a race, there are sometimes car accidents or someone goes in front of you, so you need to act quick enough to either push the brake the right way, push the brake effectively, like do you need to push it fast, you need to push it hard, or the same thing for the gas. So for the sensory exercises, this increases key muscle and joint stability, which is what we saw in the previous slide. So you'll see that he's doing step ups and or squats on this ball. Basically it has to be an unsteady platform, so just not like a regular weight platform, weightlifting platform. And this also engages their core. Secondly, you'll see that they do a lot of body squats as well, body weight squats, because this improves their knee joints and their ankle joints. And lastly, you'll see that they really do stress the training of their neck muscles because of how heavy the helmets are that they have to wear in order to prevent from traumatic brain injury. So now we're going to go into the mechanical analysis of this sport, which is basically, we just went over the anatomy and physiology of the sport, and now we're going to go into how physics plays a role in this. So aerodynamics is one of the other key components to the physics side of this sport, but it also acts under Newton's first law, which I'll be going over in the image that has arrows with the writing in it. I did that. So we're going to go over the you'll see that the hood is like at a peak, and that's so that the air is they call it a splitter because they want the air to move in a certain way over the hood and under the car, but mostly over the hood because they want the car to stay as close to the ground as possible because that improves speed. So you'll see bringing back Newton's first law. So it's an object in motion will stay in motion, and an object at rest will stay at rest unless an external force is acted on it. So what can these external forces be would be the next question. So the number one force that you'll see in driving period or anything with a tire is friction, because a car can continue or any object can continue at a constant velocity, but the friction of the ground and the tire rubbing will disturb that constant velocity because it will then slow down the acceleration and move into a state of rest. So now another external force could be air resistance. When they are driving against the wind sometimes. Sometimes it's faster or yeah, faster wind. Sometimes the wind speeds are low. So you'll never really know that on your race day. But air resistance is a force acting against the car's movement. So the other one would be the driving force acting against the air resistance force. And I included weight because that would be in most free body diagrams. So weight would just be the mass times the acceleration. So depending on the car, but the basically saying that the other external force could be gravity because acceleration, yeah. So now we will be going into, like most sports, you will always have common errors. So we're going to specify on the common errors that pertain to Newton's first law of motion. So I'm going to go over the problem and then like what was violated, the effects on a person's safety, like what is now the result of that problem. And then I will be going over the prescription. How do we prevent this problem or improve our chances of not having this problem? So the first problem I'm going to be going over is not pushing the brakes quick or hard enough. And that is something I went over before on why they really exercise their eye-hand coordination, their neuromuscular communication, and their sensory exercises. So the violation would be the neuromuscular communication. And why is that? Because if you don't have rapid communication between your nervous system and your muscular system, then you can react too late. And in a sport where multiple cars are moving at 150 to 200 miles per hour, you need key communication. So that's what was violated. So now what could that violation and problem do to the athlete? At times it results in a car accident, the loss of a race, and sometimes death. So death would be because of the way the car may have flipped, what it may have hit, but oftentimes these cars can light on fire. Now, they do have preventative uniforms to protect them from the fire that could potentially happen, but at times if their car was flipped into a way that they can't even get out and there isn't someone to go quick enough, because sometimes these tracks are, there are a wide range of sizes, so sometimes people can't get to you in time, and that would be how death happens. So how would we improve this and decrease the rate of this happening? And you would want the athletes to increase their eye-foot coordination and ankle sensory exercise. So you essentially want the athlete to be able to communicate quickly that I'm seeing a car in front of me, I need to push my brakes, I need to push them this way. So you just want the communication within your spinal cord to the muscles and areas of your ankle to communicate quicker. So the next problem would be getting on gas too soon or too hard. So that's basically the same thing, but the violation often is actually in the car rather than the athlete's neuromuscular junction. Neuromuscular communication. So this is the overdrive tire and disturbing the friction. So oftentimes they do see a result. So this wouldn't be so much atomical as it would be mechanical. And they need to really test the tires out that they are putting on the cars to make sure that the friction is not surprising. So the safety effect would be the same in all three of the ones I'm going to go over. So it's basically, it could result in car accidents, loss of a race, and sometimes death, depending on how severe the car accident can be. So the prescription would be to test the car's exit speed. And now I will be going on to the last common error that pertains to Newton's first law of motion. Um, and that would be moving the steering wheel too fast. So again, this would be neuromuscular communication. And the same way to improve it, you need better eye-hand coordination, exercises. So basically, just as with the brake that you need your nervous system to communicate with your muscles quicker, oftentimes athletes don't know how far of a degree to move the steering wheel and or how fast to do it. So something that would improve this would be like the exercise that we went over, table tennis, or I know a lot of people do racquetball. That's another one that really improves eye hand coordination. So now I will be going over the conclusions. So essentially, Newton's first law in race car driving. So in conclusion, Newton's first law of motion, the law of inertia, is demonstrated within race car driving. Examples are found within the car itself and the human body driving the sports car. So it's basically saying that there is you can see an object at rest will stay in rest, and this object will be either the car or the human body. And the object will move at a constant velocity, would be within the car and the human body. And these are my works cited, and thank you for watching.